In the 1970s, the Smiley family moved into a quaint old farmhouse in Maine, seeking a quiet life. They had no idea that the house was already occupied by forces more malevolent than anything they could possibly imagine. What began as strange phenomena quickly escalated into a fight for survival against a brutal, demonic entity. This is the true story of the Smiley family's horror, a terrifying haunting that utterly destroyed a family. The peaceful facade of the rural Maine home belied the nightmares that would unfold within its walls. At first glance, the Smiley family appeared happy, their new residence a dream come true. But as time passed, their expressions in photographs began to change. Anxiety and fear etching deep lines into one's carefree faces. In the early days, the phenomena were relatively mild. Objects would move or vanish, only to reappear in odd places. Heavy footsteps could be heard in the attic when no one was there. Bathroom doors would open and then slam shut. The Smiley family tried to find logical explanations, blaming it on the wind or the old house itself. But then things took a much darker turn. As days turned into weeks, the family's attempts to rationalize the events grew increasingly desperate. They'd wake to find cherished heirlooms in bizarre locations, family photos turned face down, and cold spots that seemed to follow them from room to room. The creaks and groans of the old farmhouse took on a sinister quality, as if the very structure was alive and watching their every move. The malevolent entity grew bolder. Children were dragged from their beds in the middle of the night, screaming in terror. Adults were pushed, slapped by invisible hands. A radio would blast on at full volume on its own. The family began seeing tall, dark shadow figures moving swiftly through the hallways and living room. Extreme fear turned into outright panic. They couldn't sleep. They couldn't live peacefully in their own home. Night after night, the Smiley children would wake to the sensation of icy fingers wrapping around their ankles, pulling them from the safety of their beds. Their screams would pierce the darkness, bringing their parents running, only to find the rooms empty save for the palpable presence of evil. The adults weren't spared either. Mr. Smiley once felt a tremendous force slam into his back, sending him sprawling across the kitchen floor. Mrs. Smiley would feel phantom hands caressing her face as she tried to sleep, paralyzed with fear. The shadow figures became a constant, terrifying presence. Tall, inky silhouettes would dart across their peripheral vision, always vanishing when directly looked at. Sometimes they'd linger in doorways or at the foot of beds, their featureless faces somehow radiating malice. The family's fear was all-consuming, turning their home into a prison of terror. Then the evil began to communicate. Growling, guttural voices would emanate from empty rooms. A deep, menacing voice began to speak to the family, taunting them. At one point, a pencil moved across paper on its own, scrawling terrifying messages. "Get out, or you will die." The Smiley family desperately sought help from paranormal investigators and priests, but it seemed nothing could deter this relentless force. The first time they heard the voice, it was a low, rumbling growl that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. "You don't belong here," it snarled, sending ice through their veins. As days passed, the voice grew clearer, more articulate in its threats. It would call out family members by name, describing in graphic detail the horrors it planned to inflict upon them. One evening, as the family huddled together in the living room, seeking safety in numbers, they watched in horror as a pen rose from the coffee table. With jerky, unnatural movements, it began to write on a nearby notepad. The message was simple but chilling: "Get out." The next night, the warning was even more dire: "You will die." The Smileys knew then that this was no mere haunting. They were dealing with something far more sinister and determined. Frantic for help, the family reached out to local paranormal investigators. These seasoned ghost hunters entered the home with confidence, armed with EMF meters and infrared cameras. But even they were unprepared for the sheer malevolence that permeated the house. Equipment malfunctioned, batteries drained inexplicably, and team members reported feeling physically ill. One investigator fled the premises in tears, claiming to have seen a demonic face leering at her from a darkened window. When the investigators proved ineffective, the Smileys turned to their faith. They contacted priests from various denominations, hoping that spiritual intervention might succeed where technology had failed. But even men of God found themselves overwhelmed by the evil that had taken root in the farmhouse. Attempts at exorcism and blessings all proved futile. Priests reported feeling powerful demonic presences, and even they faced disturbing phenomena within the house. After years of living in hell, the Smiley family realized there was no way to win. They had to make a heartbreaking decision: leave their home behind, abandon everything they owned, to escape the force they couldn't defeat. They left with emotional scars that would never heal. The first exorcism attempt was a harrowing affair. The priest, a veteran of spiritual warfare, entered the home with quiet confidence. But as he began to recite the rites, the house seemed to come alive with rage. Windows shattered, furniture toppled, and an unearthly howl filled the air. The priest staggered out hours later, his face ashen, muttering about a darkness beyond his comprehension. Subsequent attempts fared no better. Blessings were met with mockery. Holy water sizzled and evaporated upon touching certain surfaces, and crucifixes would be found twisted and melted. One particularly brave clergy member spent a night in prayer within the house, only to emerge at dawn with his hair turned white, refusing to speak of what he'd witnessed. As the months stretched into years, the toll on the Smiley family became unbearable. Once a tight-knit, happy unit, they now moved through their days like shells of their former selves. Dark circles permanently ringed their eyes, testament to countless sleepless nights. They jumped at every sound, flinched at every shadow. The children's laughter, once a common sound in the house, had long since faded into fearful whimpers. Finally, after one particularly violent night where it seemed the very foundations of the house shook with demonic fury, the Smileys knew they had reached their breaking point. With heavy hearts, they made the decision to abandon their home. Deployed, it meant leaving behind furniture, clothes, cherished mementos. But the alternative was to stay and risk their lives and sanity. In the dark of night, with only the clothes on their backs and a few hastily packed essentials, the Smiley family fled their home. As they drove away, tears streaming down their faces, they could have sworn they heard triumphant laughter echoing from the house they once loved. The Smiley house in Maine still stands, a chilling reminder of the horror that transpired. Stories of paranormal phenomena continue with subsequent owners. The Smiley family's case is a harrowing testament that some places are simply too deeply rooted in evil, and some battles humans cannot win. It's a warning. Sometimes, when you step into an old house, you're not the only one there. And sometimes, those forces don't want you to leave. Years have passed, but the farmhouse remains a source of local legend and fear. Curious teenagers dare each other to spend nights on the property, only to flee in terror before midnight. Real estate agents struggle to keep tenants in the home for more than a few months at a time. Some claim to hear the echoes of the Smiley family's screams on quiet nights, while others report seeing dark figures peering from the windows, even when the house stands empty. The Smiley family never fully recovered from their ordeal. They moved far away, trying to rebuild their lives, but the scars of their experience ran deep. Nightmares plagued their sleep, and the sound of creaking floorboards or a door slamming shut could send them into panic attacks. They became advocates for those dealing with paranormal encounters, warning others of the very real dangers that can lurk in seemingly innocent homes. Their story serves as a chilling reminder that not all hauntings are benign. Not all spirits are lost souls seeking peace. Sometimes evil takes root in a place so deeply that it becomes a part of the very fabric of reality. The Smiley family's nightmare is a cautionary tale, urging us to be wary of the unknown, and to remember that some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed again.